Today we're going to address something that I was hoping not to address. Really, I'm not being sarcastic. Well, not yet. Not yet. But I was hoping not to have to address at least one of the topics that we're going to address. Truth of the matter is, I believe that we have a dual treatment here, considering the topic that we're going to talk about. Okay, we're going to talk about backdoors and spyware, and specifically when this comes from corporations. When that happens, historically, when that happened in the past, we had like a lot of noise, and I mean a lot of noise. Okay, not just on the community, but also on the news as well. In overall news articles and so on. Because to be fair, maybe in some of those cases actually a bit more publicity than it should. And not that the issue was not serious. That's not the matter. But truth of the matter is, every other developer leaves a backdoor in. And some of those backdoors are actually, as the name suggests, an alternative means of access. Sometimes with bad intentions, sometimes is development artifacts that they get into production. Sometimes a third party finds that and decides that that is not something that is going to be removed from the production build. And so you have that dual excuse. But it is quite popular. I was a developer 7 years. I lost count of how many backdoors I found from developers in the code where I worked. And if in case you're curious, that's actually on LinkedIn, so you can check that out. I can say that for some of the projects that I visited, for some of the clients, I actually found backdoors. It's not something unheard of. It's not a myth. Yes, a lot of developers will leave backdoors, especially when you're considering low pay and consulting companies, especially the younger. These days we have NPC devs. Most of them don't even know how to build a backdoor, even if they want it. That's going to be a bit different. But back in the day, at least when I was in dev, which was a very long time ago, this was actually quite popular. Now we're also going to take a shallow dive into the Ubuntu news. It is true that I'm a strong proponent of the fact that if you are willing to install Linux for the first time, the user-friendly should never be a thing. If you want to know why I say this, I could speak for the whole topic for a few hours. But if you're migrating from one operating system to another, you want to know what you are getting into. You need to know. And the only way to do that is actually to dive headfirst into the topic and master it. That's not going to be easy. That's not going to be user-friendly. So I'm also not those who believe that Linux should be for everyone. Okay? It's not. Actually, at this point, I'd say Linux is not for anyone. Because I'm going to take a chance here, and I'm going to say we are going to see the first supply chain attack on Linux soon enough. Okay? Because as soon as cargo gets onto the kernel, and I read the documentation for that project, and my interpretation is that they are considering using it, I'm going to say that you're going to have a supply chain attack. on the core of the Linux pretty soon. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I say that Linux at this point is not for anyone. It's not, at least not those who are serious about keeping their privacy and their security in check. Okay, and this is the first time I say this about Linux, by the way. So we're going to address that, and we're also going to address Ubuntu. Not that I am a strong proponent of Ubuntu. I'm actually quite the opposite. My favorite Linux distribution is actually Slackware. There's no dbuzz, there's no systemd, and none of those unicorns. Anything of that sort. It's pretty simple, Unix-like, and the way it should be, and pretty hardcore. You need to know what you're doing. There's no package management, no dependency management, automated dependency management to clutter your system. And it's basically like that. You manage your own stuff your way. That's it. You know what you're doing is going to be solid. You don't know what you're doing, it's going to be horrible. Okay. For some, Ubuntu serves a purpose. Usually I say that if you want to install Ubuntu, you're better off staying on Windows, because it's more stable. Okay, quality wise, Canonical is not really there. Actually, the only reason why we use Ubuntu in our security lab, because it's cheesy as hell. Now, not to bash on something, they actually made something that I was not considering at all, coming from Canonical. Which was they decided to re-implement the Coreutils, an exercise that one would classify as a good effort to master a language, considering that we are talking about a language that leads to basically depressions and developer burnouts. I'm talking about Rust. Every other Rust developer ends up in either in depression or a burnout. I think that alone is a sign for the language itself. When they said it's better than C, okay, I never seen an assembly developer on a burnout. They have pretty long beards though. Never seen a depression there. But okay. So, but that actually did something cool. So first things first, let's address the elephant in the room, and I'm going to address something that I was not willing to do. Anthropic installs a backdoor in your system, okay? It's calling it spyware, dormant spyware, but it's a backdoor. It's a bloody backdoor, okay? It's an implant. It has all the telltale signs of something that we do when we do a threat emulation. Fun fact, I haven't heard of a single EDR that flagged this behavior. And as we're going to talk and see here with this researcher here, let me put this into read mode here so the page is more clean. Reader mode. Oh, beautiful. As we're going to see, that one's pretty suspicious. Okay, I am going to take this as an inspiration for a few evasion, to have this into consideration for evasion purposes in the upcoming weeks. So it is essentially a Trojan horse. So the first picture will say pretty much everything. I'm not going to go through it. All of this, because I'm bad at reading and talking at the same time, so sometimes I mumble. And I'm going to go for a few of the first sections here. So I installed Claude Desktop, and I did not install anything into Brave, but Claude Desktop, an Anthropic application, reached across a trust boundary between two independent vendors and wrote configurations into Brave application directory. We are talking about Mac. Okay, not only this is a disappointment from the Mac's ecosystem perspective, because I was not expecting this. There are bypasses, I've seen that, but most of the time when an application wants to write elsewhere, like for example, the terminal wants to have access to this side of the system. If you have the system set up the way I do, you're going to see that prompt show up. I'm actually that crazy because every time I do that, by the end of the day, I go back there and I remove those options. Because I'm crazy in that way. So I reset the permissions of all my applications every time I use them. But I'm a bit nuts. That's the way I do things. I have trust issues with my trust boundaries are very short. It's very short. Very small. Now, independent application directory. The principle is that application does not silently modify another application for obvious reasons. And this really gets taken, but Anthropic broke it in silence. Not only they did this without the authorization of the user, without the consent of the user, without the user knowing, and without mentioning in their documentation. So this is essentially the description of a freaking backdoor. Now, this article floated on LinkedIn for once, and I haven't seen any news about it. So Anthropic is going around and backdooring a lot of every single client of theirs, or the ones that are using their services for free-ish. I don't know if that's possible because I'm not a cloud user. Fortunately, I think let me go to the things. Considering that these companies need your data to train their models, the last thing you want to do is to have their applications on your system. Okay, so even if you have to, just sandbox the living hell out of that crap, and maybe use like don't use a container. Don't use a container. That's not enough. Okay, we're talking about serious weaponry here, like nuclear grade weaponry here. No, don't. This is a full blown VM. Okay, just offline if you have to, or at least one of those that you're going to reset the bloody thing, like a live VM, like a live CD VM, something like that, where it's completely clean every time you use it, so that they get basically zero out of your telemetry. Out of that, okay. But no opt-in, it just installs. Now, how difficult it is to remove it, okay? And here is the last nail of the coffin, okay? The thing that turns this into, oh well, let's put a feature in there. Let's see if we can profit from the users a bit more, other than just what they pay for. So that we can further train our models into. No, that's not enough. Let's actually go forward. Let's move forward with that. Let's I think we need to personalize this thing. Let's can we put the video feed here? I'm going to make a lot of faces. I think you need to see my face to see that this is serious business here. Okay, so where were we? This is the last nail. Okay, this part here is the last nail in the coffin. This is what it actually, to me, what actually makes it so that we can clearly see the true intent of Anthropic or Claude, whatever. If this were to be a feature, say, that you would say, as we used to say in development, a nice to have. Would be really nice to have the logs from the exceptions that the browsers from the users throw. So that way we may have an idea of potential issues or bugs that might go unnoticed, or misbehaviors. When they file a bug, we'll probably have more information about that bug. Okay, this is a nice to have. Okay, you're going to log exceptions. You're going to have a lot of stuff, and you're going to log that into a database. You're going to fill up pretty fast, but it was something that we used to do back in the day. But that could be seen as telemetry from the user's browser. So it's something that you might want to do for an internal application, doing this from for like public stuff, like websites or things that involve clients, proper clients, like paying clients. You need to make them know that you're doing this, right? Otherwise, it's like telemetry, unauthorized telemetry of the browser. I know the application is yours, right? But it's the polite way of doing things, like correct way of doing things, not just polite. It's actually the proper way of doing things, and not just hide it in a very long EULA that nobody reads. Okay. Now, if this were to be such a thing, okay, say you don't want it, just clean it. That's it. And in that case, it would say, you're clever. You're trying to get away with getting more information out of your clients. No, that's what's happening here. That's not what's happening here, because not only this is a zero-click port, so there's some good, interesting things here for Apple to work on. Actually goes on and it hides itself. Where is it? I'm looking for a particular instance. Cloud desktop runs log. Okay, so in another machine, from the log alone, it was possible to know there was 31 separate install events across the log. This is not only a backdoor, it also has embedded the logic to achieve persistence. This is APT level behavior. This is an implant. A dormant, but an implant. Anthropic is backdooring their clients. Okay, let that sink in. I haven't seen anything. Okay, this blog post is actually quite polite, I would say. Right to the vicinity of being almost incorrect. And maybe it's a good research. Okay, and being a bit sarcastic there. Maybe that's why this didn't get the attention that it deserved. Okay. This is completely unacceptable. Okay. When Huawei had an event where an alternative access or developer access was left in the build or the firmware of a device, we had an insane number of posts and news about the fact that Huawei was backdooring there. When Cisco had a similar event, backdoor was the word to describe it. Okay. Do I believe that those are backdoors? Yes, I do. Do I believe that those are unique? No. Okay. No, they're not. Okay. Actually, I go for it. I can tell you that, in my opinion, and this is worth what it's worth, a lot of the bugs that we see, the oldest ones, okay, say the cPanel level of bugs, I don't think they're bugs. Okay? I don't think they're bugs. The reason why I don't think they are bugs is because I know for a fact that any decent developer would be able to find something as basic as that. I also know that the reason why they're not reported is because cPanel is everywhere. Okay? If there is no money involved for you to publish things these days, there's not. The only people pushing CVEs out and bugs out are only two. First one are the ones who are getting paid to do. The second ones are the ones that are starting finding CVEs. And in the beginning, you can endure the pain of trying to register a CVE. Okay, after a while, you realize that it's not worth it because the whole process is wonky, is sketchy as hell. It doesn't work. And you spend most of the time chasing this and the other person in an attempt to make them actually recognize that that's a freaking bug. It might as well just push the exploit into full disclosure and get away with that. Just don't do that with your email, okay? Just don't. I did that a number of times until I learned my lesson. Just use an email that you use only for that. Just or create a new one every time. because you're going to get some pushback. But as I said, if the system is not, it doesn't work, okay, at least people will know that there's serious issues. Or do what I do, just hoard exploits left and right when you're going to need them. And so bugs like that, I don't believe that they would go unnoticed, that they don't go unnoticed. Somebody knew about it. It just, there was zero incentives of letting it know. It rewrites the manifesto at every launch, so deleting the file, that doesn't really work. It pre-authorizes 3 Chrome extensions. Then I have installed 0 of them. Lucky you. All 3 of them. Actually, let's put them on one thing. Chrome and browser extensions are a trap. Okay, they're a very good way to shoot yourself in the foot, because if something gets really, really popular, right, the chances of someone realizing that they're doing a lot of work for free, getting bug reports for nothing, and they will realize that, oh, maybe if I add some secret sauce, I can actually profit from this thing. So maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Okay, and that's basically basically how a lot of developers realize that backdoors are not that bad. So Chrome extensions, cool way, nice feature, a good way to nuke your feet off quite fast. Just keep those in check, or just don't use them a lot. Don't use them at all. So I have installed 0 of them. They all 3 are whitelisted to spawn. Here's the last. Here's this is not a nail. This is a bazooka. Okay, this is the nuke. Okay, to spawn out of the sandbox helper. Not only they want access to your host, they don't want to be bound by the sandbox. So if you were still wondering, maybe, just maybe he's overreacting. Okay? This should clear things out, because if this were to be just something that, and again, nice to have, if this is actually a nice to have instead of a backdoor, you would mind the sandbox, would you? So yeah, good luck. Good luck with your AI applications, because I'm going to go on a limb and say that one or 2 things will happen. Either Claude is going to come out with an equally cheesy and full-blown lie of the reason and the origins of this, or every other AI provider will start doing the same. And we are going to go back to the late 90s, where you would open a browser and tons of crap would open. Only this time, they're happening in the background, and they're collecting and running things on your system without you knowing it. Nice. So not only you're going to open your system to get hacked, now you don't even need an implant anymore. You can just use the freaking applications that you have there and go on with it. Canonical did something that I would consider unexpected, considering their quality track record. And in case you don't know, my opinion on that is horrible. I think Canonical's quality track record is worse than Microsoft. It's full blown and it's non-existent at this point. The only quality control they have is because they inherit from Debian, and that's not that bad. It's actually kind of stable. It's not as good as Slackware. Definitely not. So anyone think, but Slackware has very little updates. Yeah, you're supposed to manage stuff your way. You do it. The best quality control that there is. You compile it, you do it, you manage it, you have the control. You are in the driving seat. That's the way it should be. Okay, So what do we have? We have an audit, and we have 113 issues. Yes, you do. Yes, we do. Now, is this proof that Canonical is really bad at writing code? Kind of. Well, bugs are expected. There's only one type of project that has 0 bugs. You know which one it is? An untested one. So, initially 44 CVEs, it ramped up to 70, or a total of 113 issues. There are some things that I want to call out here, not to bash this thing too far, because they actually did a good thing. So I'm going to let them slide for a bit. The work in the audit is it's pretty solid actually, but pretty decent work. I'm going to isolate one thing. One thing. And a gross majority of the issues that you're going to find are coding mistakes. Coding mistakes mean they are the full-blown bugs. And basically, let's get something clear here. Security issue is a bug. It's the only difference between a bug and security issue is one has a security consequence, the other one doesn't. Okay, crash, and privilege escalation. That's a bug and a security issue. They highlight a number of coding mistakes, and I think the report is really polite in the way that to highlight what it exactly is. There are some cases where you get there are more of these coding mistakes to make the case that one can clearly see that memory corruption is a symptom, not the problem. The problem is code is oftentimes a piece of crap because the developer doesn't have enough experience, or because people make mistakes. And if machines are learning from people, guess what is going to happen? Mistakes. Okay, that's not going to change, is it? So using machines to write code, using people to write code, there's only one difference: how fast you're going to make mistakes. Okay, that's the only difference. That's the only difference. And anyone that tries to sell the otherwise is either ignorant or lying. Okay, that's it. It's only those two options, in my opinion. It's what it's worth. Now, coding mistakes. This one's pretty cool because it basically, after calling chroot before dropping privileges, was the polite thing, the polite and the proper way of doing things. If you're not doing anything with Docker, because Docker doesn't really like to drop privileges because they think they're still in the 90s. You can basically inject arbitrary code and get again privilege escalation. So this is a coding mistake with a very serious consequence. It's actually sort of a race condition. There's a full-blown exploit here, but it's not the only one. It's not the only one. If we go here up, there are actually a number of them here. For example, this is one dealing with symbolic links, and there are many others. There's one with the move and the backup of the this is another one that leads to arbitrary writes, so privilege escalation again. This is no memory corruption and still privilege escalation bugs. So me 1, Rust 0. So another symbolic link issue. They don't know how to verify their paths, do they? There's also another example here that actually in the first take of this video, I actually paused it to find it. Symbolic link. For my singing buffer overflow calls panic. Oh, I guess someone is using it safe. So not only format string, we also format string and buffer overflow in one shot. Go Rust. You are the one and only, the one that is going to make overflows and memory corruptions obsolete. You're it. Yes, those things will disappear. or not. No, you're not. Because nothing is perfect, because we are not perfect, and we can't do perfection. Just realize this and move on with your life. The longest period of any software development is maintaining the bugs that we create every time we touch the code. This realization is what makes the difference between a senior dev and a junior dev, in my opinion. So let me see if I can find preserve root. So there's one thing that I'm trying to find out. I'm really doing a really bad job at it. And I will highlight what I'm talking about. So on Linux, and actually in Unix in general, the return 0 means success. Anything other than that is basically a fail. Apparently there's a misinterpretation of this, or Rust have a different way of dealing with things, and this difference is getting is creating conflicts. Okay, so the exit code is 0 for a success. Anything other than that is an error exit code. But there's a macro that uses a different logic. So one of the two things that happens in re-implementations like this: either you follow the norm, or you try to impose your norm because you think that you know better than years and years and years and years and years of development from GNU. Okay, if you think that you're better than everyone else that came before you, all these years of C development, in eons of time. Yes, I'm exaggerating this just to make a point, okay? If you think that you are that brilliant, you might say that returning 0 is a bunch of crap, and actually 1 might mean success and anything else would be fail, okay? And impose you set your foot on. And then you have to deal with the consequences of your choice, because it's going to be a can of worms. And either that happened or they just did a mistake. But truth of the matter is, it led to basically a can of worms in a few cases in here, and basically quality issues and bugs left and right on copies. There's also one bug with the copy where the preservation, there's a flag you can use to preserve the backup. Copy the backup of a file, and that feature is not basically, it doesn't do anything. It's not working at all. So in those cases, we have two things in this that I want to highlight here. First and foremost, do I believe that this is a mistake? Yes, it is. It is a very gross mistake. Do I believe that this is worth pursuing? Well, if you want to master Rust, I think it's probably one of the best exercises you can get. Do I think this is production ready? Not even by a long shot. Okay, but I also don't believe that any Ubuntu release is production ready. So it's actually production material. But there's actually another side to this. Bugs like these, small bugs like these, and I'm not going to focus on security issues because every single code has security issues, and Rust is not going to be an exception. That's why I say that if you use the argument of Rust is better because you don't have memory corruption, I say bullshit. Okay, that's what you're going to hear from me. Bullshit. Okay, that's bullshit. Why? Because that's not how we pwn machines year round. Okay, we don't do overflows every week. We take advantage of features and bugs. Okay, and sometimes we can chain bugs and to get something interesting out of it. When we have buffer overflow, and believe me, I love overflows because I like memory corruption exploits. I like the puzzle. Okay. I like to do that. And that is something I like to do in my free time, which these days is not much. But I actually enjoy those things. I enjoy going through it. I believe I'm probably going to miss it when they go away, if they go away. But that's not what we do. That's not what we do. We take advantage of bugs, full-blown bugs. Okay, sometimes bugs that people didn't even thought that they had security consequences. Most of the time, they're as far away from memory corruption as they can get. So that's why the security aspect of Rust being more secure, being the only reason why someone would go and replace years and years and years in expertise in development, in features, in bug reports, in bug fixes, in development for all these years, from something like Coreutils, made for all these years for free, to just put a huge dump on top of it and say, we're going to replace it with Rust because Rust is so good that we're going to basically be better than it in a few releases, is just either one of two things. Either someone is bluntly incompetent, okay? It's full-blown incompetent, or is a grossly naive, or technically illiterate, which I really don't know which is going to be. But it's not going to be. It's not going to be. Okay, so this is, to me, this is a living proof that they have a lot of work to do. They will still have a lot of work to do. They will probably have a lot of burnouts for this event. It's going to be a money pit. Maybe a lot of the community, some people in the community will jump in. You're going to have another risk of supply chain attack because they're using cargo as well. So you have that aspect. So you add another risk to the system. And chances are, since not everyone is Rust is not a language. I feel language-wise and syntax-wise, since the syntax is almost changing every other week, I would say that it's not pleasant. Rust development is not pleasant. It's not really pleasant at all. And I consider it because not a lot of EDRs are able to make sense of it yet. So it's an obscure language. It's actually a good idea for EDR evasion and to store malware. Well, cargo is amazing to store malware and implants on. If you want to know my opinion on it, because it's not scrutinized. And so, but that's true for Maven and any other NPM, as we've seen, just any other public thing out of that nature is equally cheesy. It's not pleasant, and if this doesn't get a community traction, it's going to only make the community divide itself. And in the end, you're not going to get anything out of it, neither on the first effort or the second effort or everything else. They will start blaming each other because they keep going instead of jumping on the new thing, and going to start a war instead of fixing things. And either is going to get anywhere. So I think this is a mistake. This is a very big mistake. And let's see where it goes. Be careful. Be careful. A lot of these companies these days are trying to not just sell what you browse off. Apparently, they're now a border and actually doing full-blown implants on your boxes. Just be careful, okay? Check twice before you install anything, and actually do some risk assessment before you do the deployment of any of those tools. And I'll see you in the next one.